Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Engage in a conversation about what's needed for effective English medium instruction in today's global context. And what I want to spotlight are some key shifts, what I think of as really 4 key shifts in learning and teaching for student success. And why would I organize this around a conversation around 4 key shifts in English medium instruction? I really want to put forth to you 3 reasons. First, millions of students today around the globe share the goal of attaining academic success in English. This is a very, very diverse and growing population, many backgrounds and experiences. So I'll say more about that in just a moment. Second, this is also a group of students of the next generation who really need what I think of as a new set of skills. If we really look to the research and look carefully at the effects of globalization, of economic and social development, we are talking about a new and more sophisticated set of skills to be successful today and tomorrow. And finally, I therefore would suggest, given the rapid change across the world, social, global, economic development, and what counts as literate being on the rise, no surprise, the model of English medium instruction has not kept pace with these rapid changes. So we're going to sort of discuss the fact that there is a pressing need to really rethink the approach to meet the learner's needs and the demands of today's context. So let's unpack the first reason together. So first of all, we have this large and growing diverse population. Just 20 years ago, we had about 1,000 English language international schools worldwide. These were largely the children, many of you will know, these were largely the children of expat families. Today, we are talking about a population of about 8,000 international schools, 4.5 million students, and 80% of them are from the school's host country. Rapid growth and change in the population with implications for education. If we look out 10 years, the estimates are that these numbers will double, that we will be at about 16,000 schools and 8.75 million students worldwide. So we have a shifting landscape, we have more diversity, and we have a growing population. At the same time, the globalization, the social and economic development really do demand new skills of the next generation. If this group is going to drive tomorrow's society and economy, they need advanced literacy and communication skills. They need critical thinking and problem-solving skills, and they need global and cultural knowledge and competencies. There is what we think of, if we look carefully at the research of the last decade or so, there is a new role of language and literacy skills in society, in our neighborhoods and in the global world. And effectively, what we mean by this is what counts as literate is on the rise. There was a time when very basic literacy skills were a perfectly straight line to a middle-income lifestyle. And today, we need increasingly sophisticated literacy skills to thrive day to day. Why? Because of technology and automation. So we have an economy and a labor market whereby computers and technology have really taken over lots of parts of many sectors. And so we need to focus our education system around the work that the computers and the technology can't do, and certainly can't do better or faster. And that is the foundational work of problem solving and communication. So just to drive that point home, if we look at recent research that takes us, looks carefully at work tasks in a knowledge economy, for example, in this case in the US, what we see when we look at those jobs and work tasks core to the jobs that have accelerated, that have grown tremendously over the last 50 years, for example, we find that the two fastest growing core tasks are one, working with new information for use in problem solving or to influence others' decisions, and second, to solve unstructured problems, those problems that lack rule-based solutions. And what you'll see from this chart is those work tasks and corresponding jobs that have just dramatically, precipitously dropped and shrunk in this knowledge economy involve routine manual tasks, non-routine manual tasks, and routine cognitive tasks. And you might say, why the non-routine manual tasks and why the routine cognitive tasks? Well, at this point, we have artificial intelligence. So that is also to be considered when we think about educating the next generation. When we talk about today's workforce, especially in a knowledge economy, we're talking about also the need to combine the cognitive and the social skills. And by social skills, we mean the interpersonal skills, the teamwork, the ability to work in a collaborative environment, in a fast-paced environment where our communication is effective with our peers, with our partners, with our colleagues. We need leadership capabilities in that day-to-day, collaborative, fluid, team-based environment. Those are the interpersonal skills. The intrapersonal skills that we're also educating for are the motivation, the attitude, the ability to learn, our problem-solving skills, our analytical skills. If we look carefully at this slide together, these are not skills that you simply acquire once you're on the job. These are skills we have to cultivate among our youngest learners all the way through their adolescence, their youth, and their early adulthood. That we can't simply imagine that they will acquire and cultivate these skills on the job. And in so doing, we want to drive up cultural and global competencies. So we have many of these skills reflected in today's global standards and frameworks. They are discussed at large in terms of where we want to go as a global society. So taken together, we have this growing and diverse and increasingly diverse population that will continue to grow, to the point where it may double in even the next decade. We have a landscape of skills, of a landscape that demands a new set of skills, what I think of as advanced literacies, communication skills, the critical thinking, the problem solving, and the global and cultural knowledge and competencies. And what we're going to do is discuss together how the model for English medium instruction has not, through no one's fault, this is tremendously rapid change, has not kept pace with this kind of change. And yet, because of the global landscape, because of the growing population, because of their goals and hopes and dreams among the learners and their families, there is a pressing need to rethink the approach to English medium instruction, to think about better meeting our learners' needs and the demands of today's global context. So let's turn now to that particular issue and to really unpack what I think of as a challenge and an opportunity. We want to design learning environments and curricula that match today's skills and our students' needs and goals. So let's look at this together in two ways. First, what does this mean in terms of a learning environment? What does that learning environment look and feel like? And second, what does this mean for the instructional approach and materials? So first, let's zoom in on the learning environment. What does it look and feel like when we are designing, when we are giving our students the opportunity to develop those skills and to meet their needs as learners, their hopes, their goals? Well, first, we are going to move to an even more dynamic, relevant, and applied teaching model. In these environments, we are working on the literacy, the language, the communication. We can't really separate those to the extent that we maybe once did. We're going to really push on the creative thinking and the cognitive flexibility, the collaboration and the problem solving. Not as nice to do, but need to do. So we're going to think about that breadth of skills. And when we zoom in on these environments, our learners are very mentally active, they are engaged, they are socially interactive, they are building meaningful connections to their lives. So that's the environment. The question for all of us is, how do we get there? And in particular, what does this mean for the instructional approach and the materials? And what I want to do is really spend some time on this key question by talking you through what I think of as really 4 key design shifts in terms of our instructional approach and materials. And I'm going to use feature examples from what is my most recent curriculum initiative in the context of a 10-year partnership with National Geographic, looking towards content-rich, engaging instruction for English learning, understanding and driving into what the research is telling us, what we know the landscape of the demographics of our students are, and what we know about their needs and goals, and what's critical for the next generation. So the paradigm shift and the 4 shifts that I want to unpack are really, I think, explained best in this way. First, we are moving from what I think of as a traditional ESL model for individual students to one that is really that advanced literacy learning environment. And I will say more about each of these in a moment. Second, we are moving from what I see as real wide variation in text levels to on grade level text with scaffolds. Third, we're going from a sort of trend towards and tendency towards coverage and volume to much deeper learning and engagement. And finally, we're going from a model that often was literature-based, often US-centric, to one that is really a global content approach with varied genres and media. So let me spend a few minutes on each of these, and then I'll look forward to a discussion with all of you. First shift, we're moving from basic English language instruction, traditional ESL for individuals, to really pushing on advanced communication and literacy learning in a collaborative environment. If we go back to when I was unpacking today's skills, the new skills, what's required, the work tasks around working with new information and solving unstructured problems and having interpersonal skills that drive into teamwork and collaboration and communication and intrapersonal skills around the problem solving and some of my cognitive flexibility, my motivation, my attitude as a learner. We're going to have to make that shift in the learning environments themselves, which is to say, we won't get better and stronger at our communication skills, at our literacy skills, if we're not collaborating and engaging with others in our learning. So we're going for that. We're going to try to broaden out the lens, the angle, right, from what has been a fairly narrow focus on thinking about getting to basic English proficiency, to really learning opportunities and learning environments that take a much broader kind of lens, right? That go to a wider focus in a way. And when we do that work, we are necessarily now talking about units of study with content-rich themes and texts. We're talking about rigor and challenge in a really supportive learning context that really privileges process, that really has students grappling with ideas and contents, learning from mistakes. We are combining what we think of as explicit instruction with inquiry-based learning. We are promoting the culturally responsive learning environments. We're using consistent routines and language, again, because we really want to advance those communication skills, and we're going for the peer-to-peer interaction. And getting there is going to mean really getting into unpacking global content with themes and essential questions that are worth studying about, that create a platform for the kind of collaboration and collaborative work that we want to have our learners exposed to and grappling with on a daily basis. So that's the first shift. We're going to think about moving from the individual as the unit of change to the learning environment as a place where the individual sits and where the individual depends upon that active, engaged learning environment to drive into their advanced literacy and communication and problem solving and creative thinking skills. Let's move now to design shifts 2 and 3, which I think go nicely together and we can unpack together. We're going from what I think of as often materials and lessons that were inaccessible to our students, too easy or too challenging, a tendency to want to cover the standards, the units and readings being too long, but we've got to get through them because we want to get through the standards, to what really is a more modular approach to standards, the shorter units with dynamic learning cycles that really revolve around authentic, on grade level text. So our developing English learners are not at all struggling thinkers. And our job is to design environments and materials that are scaffolds, that provide scaffolds not into the cognitive press, but the scaffolds are the routines, the processes to provide access because of the language to what is really engaging and rich content that their brains crave. So with that in mind, right, what does that mean for when we go to design this kind of curriculum? We're thinking about organizing around an essential question. In this case, how can we achieve happiness? In this case, in this unit, there are 3 readings: a story by Leo Tolstoy, an article from the Washington Post, a presentation from an academic talk on happiness and genetics. There's also the opportunity to quote unquote read a photograph in what we have as an Uncover the Unit lesson that has video input from the photographer and a video lesson. We have information about a National Geographic explorer as an example of global citizenship, an inspiration for the service learning projects at a personal, a school, a local, or a global level. We've got to start with big ideas and rich content. And our job pedagogically is to provide the scaffolds into that content and into their lives. So you can see here, we've got these various readings from different genres, and we finish out with the idea that it will drive into what we think of as real service learning, that it's real world, that it's connected to our students' lives and to their global learning. So we launch these units focused on the essential question, the academic vocabulary. The bulk of the unit then revolves around these very dynamic cycles, the read, talk, write, talk kind of cycle with text. And then we got to move to more cumulative work, this notion of taking action and applying it to real world. So we're going to launch the unit with the essential question. We're going to introduce that content specific and academic vocabulary that will help them make sense of complex texts. Often we stop here. We do this with a reading and we stop there. What we're going to do here in this unit is we're going to make sure that we are constantly in a dynamic relationship. The read, talk, write, talk cycle. It means that we are creating a very dynamic relationship between the texts, the content, and the developing language and literacy skills. And we do that over time and across text through discussion and talk, not simply to get through the text, but to actually process new ideas and content, to support the reading and writing instruction, to demonstrate thinking and learning. We use the writing tasks similarly to support knowledge building and thinking about ideas in the unit. We structure them based on materials that students are studying. They're anchored tightly in that content, connected to those essential questions. And we have scaffolds to plan, discuss, and organize long before we ask our students to put the proverbial pen to paper. So our oral and written language development becomes tightly interconnected with one another and with the rich content. So for example, across the 3 readings in a key unit, there are these cycles where we move from the preparation to the focus on understanding, to the focus on language, to the opportunity to share one's opinions. And here we are confounding and combining the cognitive press, the ability, the driving up content knowledge and global content knowledge with practicing and cultivating those advanced literacy and language skills. So if we took a first reading in that unit, we'd get our students ready by surfacing some of their prior knowledge and initial thoughts. And I think that's always been a good strategy, but we're going to push right through a number of dynamic cycles all the way through the unit with other readings as well, and drive into responding not just to guiding questions that connect to the essential questions, but they might even perform an alternate ending to the story where we're pushing on the creative thinking as well. So those are shifts 2 and 3. What I'd like to do now is just spend a few minutes on this 4th and final shift, which is that I think we want to move as a field from what has largely been a literature-based approach that doesn't necessarily capture today's global, diverse learners' lives and contexts, to a model that does so, a model that is more globally focused with varied texts, with visual literacy and media for meaningful study and exploration. We want our students, our global and diverse and growing population of students, they benefit from working with content that is truly global, that's more relevant, which improves their motivation and their learning outcomes, and it promotes their global citizenship and international mindedness. So we're gonna really push ourselves to come up with designs, materials, instructional plans that drive up and bring together the cultural and global competencies, the knowledge, the critical thinking, the advanced literacy skills, the communication skills. And in so doing, our students are going to see themselves represented in the materials. They are also going to have opportunities to broaden their sense of what makes for global content, of what makes for materials that are learning materials. In this case, we want our students to learn to read photography and infographics to build their visual literacy. And in this case, right, perhaps examine a photo, share what they notice and wonder, watch a video to find out more about the photographer, spark curiosity, spark discussion, and then reflect on in writing by selecting a photograph of their own to discuss with peers. So what you sort of get a feel for is this idea that we can't separate the big ideas from the language learning, from the content learning, and from the development of those skills that will indeed begin to meet our learners' needs and their goals. So what we are focused on in this kind of next generation work is really delivering breakthrough learning environments and opportunities for our students by thinking about the content, the material, the discussion-based approaches to learning, the talk for discussion's sake, the talk and discussion and debate for critical thinking. We're pushing on varied genres, the fiction, the nonfiction, the visual literacy, and we're pushing on real-world projects, application, service learning. We do so in service of those advanced literacies, the flexible thinking, the solving unstructured problems, the collaboration and communication, those global and cultural knowledge and competencies that we hope for across the globe. And in so doing, we drive into youth who have those 21st century skills, the reading, writing, communication, collaboration, youth who are ready and confident for college and career. So I'm going to stop there. It's wonderful to meet all of you, to have a chance to spark this conversation about shifts in English medium instruction, to get your questions, to engage with you on how you're thinking about the opportunities and the challenges in this space. So I welcome some time to talk with all of you.
Thank you so much, Nonie. We do have a couple of questions already in the Q&A window. And the first is from John, and he's asking, I understand the need to bring the teaching of English to a higher learning level. However, most students studying English as a foreign language have not mastered basic grammar.
Yeah.
Thus, they submit sure. Okay, please.
That's right. And John, this is the evergreen question. And I think what I want to be clear about is, in this kind of push for a different way of doing things, it's not that we're not doing the grammar. It's that we're doing the grammar in the context of a design that is simultaneously building content knowledge and giving them opportunities to a sort of staircase design where we're working on grammar and we're focused on process, and we're moving that along with all of the other skills. And I think the danger is that sometimes we are so hung up on the grammar and spending so much time on the grammar, which will come along actually more so if we're also working on the other skills and the meaning making at the same time. And I think it's a matter of, it's a both and. And I think the grammar, if we look carefully at the research, the grammar actually comes along really well in the context of rich content and in a little bit less of a mastery-oriented frame and more of a process frame. We have another question, which is, can you explain visual literacy? This is an interesting concept. What we're doing here is suggesting there are ways to become literate that is not just about the print, that there are photographs, there is artwork, there are visuals to be interpreted, to be understood with language written and oral, and giving our students that practice is part of developing their communication competencies, but also their abstract thinking, their creative thinking. We have another question around encouraging students to think critically as kids. Kids are by nature critical thinkers. They are very curious. They do very well with abstract ideas and big questions. And so you'll see that when we do some of this design work, we are starting with abstract, big ideas, even with our youngest learners. In fact, that's a very good fit for their curious and inquiry-based minds. We have another question around how can I reduce teacher talking time in teaching grammar in the class? You're not kidding. That is $1 million question as well. What you will see, and again, this is not going to happen overnight, but what you'll see that I am advocating for is a model where our teachers become a little bit more of a facilitator of student learning that involves lots of peer-to-peer activity and discussion, and less of a stand and deliver teacher who does all the talking. The way we do that, quite honestly, is we design these units of study with a plan that turns things over more to students. I'm not saying we can get everybody to comply necessarily, but we can plant the seed and give great ideas for how to structure a learning environment where teachers do less talking and students do more talking. That actually is a great segue to the question about lack of vocabulary and therefore lack of confidence. What's the best solution to overcome this being the case? The lack of vocabulary and lack of self-confidence often run together. And the only way we can lower the temperature and drive up the self-confidence is if we create a learning environment where there is just more practice and it is more natural and very commonplace to do lots of practicing. So we're just going to have to persist in small and really meaningful, really youth relevant ways to engage them in the learning and to do more talking with one another. But the on the spot, one student on the spot having to respond in front of everybody in very formal ways does not drive up the confidence. What drives up the confidence is the smaller group learning, the inquiry-based learning, the engaging material where I see myself and my peers, and we engage in this work very often with the same routines and lots of practice, which normalizes the responding. Got other questions here. Are there grade level, ability level kind of reading material from National Geographic? Absolutely. And we have looked carefully at the on grade level. We have some variation, and then we pay a lot of attention to the scaffolds into the on grade level text. We have lots of questions about the students who are shy or nervous. And I think we want to just keep reminding ourselves that it is practice with peers on a very regular basis in ways that are not so formal that start to get us to where we want to get to. Lots of routines, lots of normalizing that practice in collaborative learning environments. Do we think that teaching English in all learning areas can help learners achieve fluency? We have a very strong view, and there is a lot of research that backs this strong view, that we've got to really push a diverse range of content. We've got to go after the science and the social studies as mechanisms, as strong vehicles to teaching English. That on the one hand, for many years, I think we have been a little stuck on literature. And in fact, we will do better by a real content focused approach. We have another question around what we mean by cognitive flexibility. When we drive up cognitive flexibility in our learning environments, part of that is that we are stepping back and we are working on and studying problems and issues that do not have single answers. We are not looking for right or wrong. We are actually analyzing things from different angles. And I may read a text and interpret it one way, and Anders may read that same text and interpret it another way. And that becomes the essence of our discussion with one another. That kind of work over time with big ideas and abstract concepts breeds more cognitive flexibility. If we're debating certain topics that don't have easy answers, that aren't right or wrong, we are becoming more flexible. If we are learning about the photographer's approach to taking the photo and why, and we're connecting that to our own lives, we are becoming more flexible in the way we think. The limitations to applying this approach, I think that's a great question, and I don't think we should shy away from the limitations as a community. I think the real limitations are more in the department of challenges to implementation. We are going to ask something different of educators. It is going to take practice from educators and commitment from educators to reframe a little bit and to shift their own mindset from one often as teacher who stands and delivers to one who facilitates learning and implements over several weeks a unit of study that is content rich and very connected, that has a set of protocols and routines. So I think the limitation is more to be thought of as a challenge, because we are going to ask something different of our educators and then of our learners. And that takes persistence and a positive kind of growth mindset. Let me see what other questions we have. Anders, you might have some yourself that you're thinking about. How do we deal with our students who are non-readers? Our non-readers are still strong thinkers, and we're going to turn to audio, and we're going to turn to the visual literacy, and we're going to stay with lots of practice in a safe learning environment for them to become stronger. But there's no question that they're going to need some beginning reading instruction, and over time that we will want to scaffold them more and more into on grade level text. Let me see what else we have here.
Sorry, so there are so many questions coming in.
I know.
We're trying to. I think we have time for just one.
Speaking of being a facilitator of learning, I'm slightly flooded with my executive functioning. I'm challenged by this. Just give me 1 second here.
Sure. I think we have time for just one more.
Okay.
These are great. Everyone has such great questions. It's difficult to choose.
Yeah. No, it's super. You know, I think I'll end with one that kind of blends a couple together. So a couple of you have asked about what about pronunciation, how to improve pronunciation, and somebody else asked about connecting the real world to the reading unit because we've got different ages in the same class, et cetera. So let's just talk for a minute about the diversity of our learners. If we had to go back to that first kind of setting the stage for why I'm even having this conversation with you, we have a very growing and diverse population of learners. I will say first and foremost, pronunciation does not predict performance on really meaningful measures, on measures of vocabulary, of reading comprehension, of cognitive flexibility and creative thinking. I think it's easy to get hung up on the grammar and the pronunciation and treat those as proxies or estimates of students' communicative competency. And I think we want to decouple the two. There are the technical aspects of language, the pronunciation and the grammar. And there are the knowledge-based aspects of communication. And we want to make sure we are working on both, but we are not getting too hung up on the technicalities while our youth are developing their English. It will be much better spent if we are really pushing on their content knowledge, their academic vocabulary, their oral and written skills in terms of meaning making. So let's keep that in mind. And then in terms of this question about diversity and different ages, part of the reason we design these more modular units with shorter and dynamic learning cycles over time on the same topic is because that way, many more students have many more entry points. And what we want to do in a class with a lot of diverse learners, in any classroom, we want to differentiate. And the way we can often best differentiate systematically is to move through many different ways to learn the same content. And that starts to level the playing field, and it organizes our learners around the content and their routines and processes that then drive into multiple entry points. We also therefore want the different genres of text and the visual literacy and the media, again, different ways to get into the learning rather than long periods of time where we're expecting mastery and leaving others behind. So I hope that's helpful. It's wonderful to meet you all and to think together about these real opportunities and real challenges worldwide as we continue to educate a more and more diverse population. It's exciting. I thank you for your commitment to the field, and it's wonderful to meet you all.
Thank you so much, Nonie, for that fantastic session. And thank you again to everyone who joined and everyone who participated in this very active Q&A session. Before we wrap up, I do have a couple more things to mention. First, immediately after leaving this evening's session, you'll be directed to a feedback survey to let us know what you thought, and we appreciate all of your feedback. Second, if you're interested in learning more about our content-based English programs, including our upcoming series for middle school learners called LIFT, which is where the examples featured in today's session come from, you can visit our website at eltngl.com/EMI, or you can contact your local representative by visiting eltngl.com/repfinder. We will be sending along a recording of the session as well as a certificate within 3 business days. And please be sure to join our online community for teachers of English on our social media channels, where we will offer up-to-date information about events, practical classroom tips, exciting real-world content, new product information, and more. So we hope to see you there, and thank you again for joining. Thank you, Nonie. Have a great day, everyone, and evening.
Take care.
Bye-bye.